Hello, Jazz Tech. This is Ben Medler, one of your two teachers at Portland State University this spring during the COVID-19 online session. This is the Paijo drum set. Paijo is Portland Youth Jazz Orchestra, and I wanted to start by showing you what a professional drum set looks like, just in case you have a budget in the place that you go and you get a chance to get good equipment. So what we're looking at is a Ludwig maple shell drum set, and for hardware these are Yamaha double brace stands with a DW 7000 bass drum pedal. For cymbals we use a hand hammered Sabian 14-inch hi-hats. We're currently using the Byzance Dark Crash 18 inches for our crash. And this took a while to find, but we are currently using a Vault series, also Sabian, and that is a 21-inch cymbal. And for a throne, we use the DW twistable seat because it maintains the longest. Lots of drum thrones break very quickly. Okay, we're going to continue on with the stick part of the drum set clinic. 2 pairs of sticks in front of you will do lots of damage to your jazz ensemble, and you have to be able to spot this and make recommendations for the students. The one that we see the most often is the plastic tip, which can be really good for rock and roll. But for jazz band, it's very, very bright, and it cuts through in the places where you really don't want. So when I play a ride cymbal, with the plastic tip, it has a bright sound. Sometimes your drummers will be involved in marching band and they get excited about these chunks of wood. These are big sticks. Even though it has a wood tip, it will create a massive sound that will knock out trombone sections entirely. Ultimately, when we're looking for a jazz stick, there's lots of different tip configurations. This is actually a new one that we're trying. It's kind of unusual. But the point is that it has a smaller tip and a lighter, thinner stick. Since I'm going down the stick, I'll show you that if you use Vic Firth, the thumb is supposed to line up right around the TH for most drum grooves. So here's what this one sounds like. In this case, it doesn't distract, it actually adds to places where you might want to warm up a trombone section or something like that. Okay. For the next part of the clinic, I would like to cover how jazz patterns are written out. The example on the top is what jazz band charts used to have in them regularly around the 60s and into the 70s. Jazz is actually a newer published art form. So the first jazz book, I believe 1960, came out of the Schillinger House, which is now Berklee College of Music. In the early publications, they were trying to be literal about what the jazz feel feels like. And so they would use the quarter note and then dotted eighth to the 16th note and then back to the quarter note. But this really isn't the correct feel. That would be that's going to create lots of problems. So we try to stay away from that rhythm when possible, but if you're using one of those charts, be sure to let the student know that that is an old way of writing this. This pattern right here is going to have a lot of different interpretations based on what kind of music you're playing and maybe which drummer played it originally. And that's a really important topic. I almost prefer that it's written out this way because it makes the student do some research on how those doubles are played. Every drummer has a different way of playing these doubles. As a starter kit at Paijo, we use 3 different time feels. We talk to our drummers about swing, showtime, and bebop. This is just a starter kit, but it gets them interested that there's more than one way to play that ride cymbal, which will help you tremendously with your jazz band. When adjudicating, most of the time I'm talking to the drummer about getting these kinds of feels right. It makes it easier for the horn players, which of course lines up chords and pitch and all kinds of things that are going to be important for you. So let's talk about swing feel first. The easiest way to demonstrate it is that it belongs on a medium swing tune that has a relaxed feel. So you could say doodle a 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 doo. And then if you put the ride cymbal with my jazz stick here, put the ride cymbal on the do and the la, and you let the second do be silent, then you have a good swing feel. Doodla 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 Count Basie used this time feel all the time. Showtime is the second feel that we teach at Paijo. It allows you to put a short note on the second beat, which gives you kind of a fancy walking feel. So it's do da da 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 do. Bebop is the third feel that we teach at Paijo, and it's often associated with fast tunes. In this case, we push those eighth notes together fairly close to create a more even sound so that we can play lots of scales and triads up and down the horn. So this time feel goes do da 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 do. Just as a reminder, these are 3 starter feels. Hopefully they will get that under their fingers quickly and move on to players and profiles. This is a list of commonly studied drummers. All the names on this list are very important to the evolution of jazz drums. There are many names that are not on this list, but this is a good one to start with. You'll notice over on the right that I have a couple topics that are really important. One is what kind of a tip is on the stick. So when you're watching a video of these players, which you should all the time, what kind of a stick are they using? Secondly, where on the cymbal does that stick hit? If you notice over here, when I hit on the edge, it has what's called a washy sound. If you hit where the logo is, you get a good balanced sound. And if you hit up top towards the bell, you get a brighter sound. And of course the bell with a tip or the what's called the shoulder of the stick. A variety of sounds. So find out where that sound is coming from on the recording. They may be all the way up here for some reason. They might be all the way down here for some reason. Then you want to check out their grip. This is actually the most important thing. The grip that they hold with the stick often depends on how their time feel comes across. Stick height is another thing. Most drummers keep fairly low stick height, but some drummers will use high stick height on slower tempos because it helps them time things out. Typically speaking, you want to keep stick height low. Also, there is a stick angle kind of a correlation where some drummers will be even with the cymbal like that, and some will play on the edge from underneath and from above like that. Also, when playing the snare drum, you can have a long angle like this or a low to the snare drum kind of angle like this. Posture is incredibly important. Hopefully the drummer that you're studying is using great posture, but some of the greats don't have great posture. I'm sure that they went home after the performances hurting a little bit. Anyway, your drummers need to get a hold of that. And so the short story is the chest should be puffed a little bit, the body should be flexible, and they should be able to reach everything at the drum set without moving around a lot. If your drummer's moving a lot, then it's worth considering that the posture may not be good. Your students may have traditional or matched grip training or no training at all. Both styles are really just fine. Ultimately, they should learn both because they're studying players who used both. The short story there is that traditional allows a little more flexibility and matched allows a little more evenness between the hands. There's lots of reasons why you could go one way or the other. Let them do what they're used to, and then as they're comfortable, start to add the other style. I'm going to demonstrate 8 bars of swing, 8 bars of showtime, and 8 bars of bebop at a medium tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, here's the showtime. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And finally, the bebop. 1, 2, a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a. At fast tempos, I often recommend the bebop style. The other 2 styles become very frantic to listen to. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now here's the most important topic. Every young drummer wants to play the jazz pattern, which is what I've been playing for you throughout this clinic. I highly recommend that they start on quarter notes and get a great time feel first. Get that hi-hat locked up and balanced so that the volume is good between the 2 instruments. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. About using the rest of the drum set. You'll notice that we spent all the time so far on the ride cymbal because that is the heart and the voice of a drummer. Every song that you do is going to have a specific style, and when you get that ride cymbal correct, the rest of the band will glue together very, very quickly. Very worth the time to spend working with the drummer and getting that formula right. If it sounds like the recording, you're doing good stuff. Some of your charts will have slashes. This means play the jazz pattern or quarter notes, depending on the tempo. And then you'll see a fill. So most of your drummers will have practiced fills, rock and roll fills, and it will absolutely slow down the tempo of your song as if you're stopping for a train and then you get started again. Probably the most effective thing to do is to have them practice triplets. So what's going to happen is you play the first note of the triplet on the cymbal, and then you play the remaining 2 notes on the snare drum, or the tom, or a variety of them, including the bass drum. Now I'm going to put the phone down so that you can hear the combination of the 2. You can also put the downbeats that were on the ride cymbal. Let me move the phone just a little bit. There we go. You could put the downbeats that were on the ride cymbal in other places. So you could go. It's a good idea for them to do fills at the ends of choruses. So if you have a 12-bar blues, starting on the 9th bar, it might sound like this. You'll also notice that I did some what we call comping. There I am in the picture. So with comping, we're talking with the snare drum to the soloist or making stuff that fits in with the melodies. So that comping is very personal to the style of drummer that you're working on. And I'll give you 12 bars of Philly Joe Jones as he played it behind Miles Davis. 1, 2, 3, 4. Finally, if you don't know how to play really good jazz drums, you need to get help. And there's nothing wrong with it, and it's fun, and you don't have to learn very much at a time. If you spend 20 years teaching band classes and you learn one thing a year, you're a pretty good drummer. So make sure that you bring in clinicians, watch what they do, have them spend a minute with you to make sure that you can recreate the stuff that they're talking about. There's lots of other things for jazz drums, but this is a pretty good starter kit, and I hope this is helpful. This was Ben Medler from the Jazz Techniques class at Portland State University. Thank you.